Thompson. I'm sure that we all wish Mr Moore well in his new post, and also extend our best wishes to Kate in her new post with E-Division, Lothian and Borders. If you could note that, Claire. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome today back to Richard Whetton, who is working with the Improvement Service on Governance and Performance Management, and is also the National Advisor, Local Scrutiny and Engagement Project for Police and Fire Reform. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome back to Eleanor Gaw, Community Accountability Lead with the Scottish Police Authority. Item 1, Sederunt apologies. Claire.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 6 members present this morning. Apologies from Councillor Peacock. 4 members not present at the start, although I believe Councillor Blake intends to come on later.
Thank you. Item 3, minute of meeting 19th of June 2014. This minutes for noting have been approved at the last full council meeting on 21st of September. Noted. Thank you. Item 4, Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 2014-17, 5 monthly performance update. The purpose of this report is to present the Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 2014-17, 5 monthly performance update for 1st of April 2014-31. Could I ask Robert Moore to speak to the report, please? Welcome in.
Hello, I'm on now there. Thank you very much. This is the first report in this format, as I said there. It's the recorded data up to the 31st of August, and it's linked to the 5 priorities. The first priority there is the antisocial behaviour, and that covers our Group 1 crime, which is our violent crime, and you'll see from the report that's showing quite a marked reduction from the same period last year. Now, just a caution, I'll say a lot of percentages in the report. Because the numbers are low on a lot of cases, it's quite, I wouldn't rely on percentages too much because, as I say, they're small figures. Disorder is also down by 20%. Antisocial behaviour now, it says in the report 11%, it's actually 2% that's down. That's an error in the report. I don't know if any eagle-eyed members looking at the figures had noticed that. Antisocial behaviour in itself is down 2% from the same period last year. You'll also see that stop searches are down 28%. However, you'll see that the number of positive searches are up 6%, and almost a third of all stop searches by the police in Dumfries and Galloway are positive stop searches, which would indicate that they're searching the right people in the right place at the right time, which is the whole ethos behind the stop search policy for that. Moving on to substance misuse, and the first item there is drug deaths. The official recorded figures are down. However, we have unconfirmed deaths at this stage that are waiting on toxicology reports, and it's looking like they'll probably be on a par with the previous year. There's unconfirmed drug deaths still waiting to take place, 1 from Dumfries, 1 from Annan, and 1 from Stranraer, which would bring the figures back up to almost a par with the previous year. Drug supply figures are down compared with last year. However, we're ahead of the personal target that the local division had set ourselves, and there's a lot of work ongoing behind the scenes regarding drug-related crime, and that figure will change as we move through the year. The detection for the consumption of alcohol in a public place, that's markedly down, but as antisocial behaviour is down, and as we'll see later on, some of the figures with young people and alcohol are down. I think it's a positive thing that we're getting less antisocial behaviour in the streets, less drinking in the streets, and the proactivity along that is for the detections of the supply of alcohol to young people, maybe a big impact on that. Priority 3 was crime itself, and you'll see acquisitive crime is down 19%. That's the very good news on that for all sorts of dishonesty. However, house break-ins are up slightly, and that was pretty much at the beginning of the financial year. We had quite a rise in house break-ins, although some really good work locally, and some main teams involved in housebreaking have now been apprehended on the remand in prison, and we've seen a marked fall in housebreaking figures since 2 lots of people really were basically arrested for housebreaking crime. Public protection, domestic abuse crimes, you'll see they're up, I suppose quite significantly, but a very good positive detection rate. And the overall thing with the domestic abuse crime and sexual crime, which we'll come on to, is that we're encouraging people to come forward and report those crimes. And that's a historical change that's happened over the last few years, where you'll see domestic abuse crime probably rise, and it has done throughout the country. And although it says there were 514 domestic abuse crimes, it doesn't make it say there were 514 incidents. Quite often these crimes are multiple incidents where one perpetrator has committed several crimes, and it's going back through their previous history and recording all the crimes against them. Robbery is pretty much, it's slowing slightly down, but it's very small numbers. Touch wood, we get very few robberies in the region, and we're slightly down in last year, and we're hoping that's going to be a positive trend that will continue. And as I mentioned briefly there, sexual crimes, which is for Group 2 crimes, they're showing up. And as said previously, a lot of this is related to domestic crime and the sexual crimes that are tied in with that. And again, it can be multiple crimes by one perpetrator, and you'll have seen, no doubt, reports in the press recently where you get very much examples of that. Still on the public protection and crime side of that, you'll see that £256,000 has been seized in cash since the beginning of the financial year by Police Scotland and Dumfries and Galloway, and that's very positive. That's restricting these people access to cash, and we've got restraints on over almost £2.5 million, which is a positive thing, where people can't convert that money into dealing with criminal-related activity. One of the things I said earlier was the young people from offending. That's down from 219 to 150, and that's always going to be with antisocial behaviour down, young people offending down, and you'll see that the number of off-licences that have been reported for selling alcohol to underage people has gone up. So that might be a positive, that young people not getting access to alcohol, not committing antisocial behaviour events, it's all tied up together. So that's a positive side, and a lot of that's done with the diversionary work by the partnerships throughout the region to keep young people away from crime. Road safety, we've got 2 fewer deaths in the same period last year, although you'll also see that the actual activity around speeding, seatbelts, mobile phone detections are down. Part of that is due to a slight change in focus, in that there's a lot more warnings being issued to road traffic users over the past year. That was a policy decision that more education rather than enforcement. You members may have views on whether that is a positive thing or not when they see things around, but as a division we are down slightly. The force, Scotland itself, is down quite markedly with relation to road traffic offences. But the positive side of that is fewer people killed on the roads. Also within the covering report, I mentioned that the control room work has gone relatively smoothly with the closure of the local control room, and local officers, who are the main people dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, finding it quite positive in the fact they're getting access to information quickly when anything happens. And I've also mentioned a bit about armed policing in the cover note. Now, I know you've got a separate agenda item on that at the end, and I know you've got your response to send back to the police authority on that, so quite happy to take any questions on that as well, if members wish to ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Or would you prefer Bobby?
Either or, it doesn't bother me.
Thanks, Bobby. I feel more comfortable with Bobby. Thanks for the report. Open up to members. Any members' questions? That's it.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, looking at the report, I mean, Dumfries and Galloway still is a reasonably safe place to live across the whole of Scotland and the United Kingdom. Obviously, there's been issues recently with regard, and there is a part in the report about terrorism and information and intelligence about how do you keep updated with the acts that are going on. Obviously, there's an issue in Canada at the moment, and the intelligence services, I'm sure, are talking to each other about what's actually happening across there. Can you give us an idea about, without giving us too much away, of course, the intelligence that you receive, and if there are any corresponding intelligence that something's happening in Dumfries and Galloway?
Yeah, well, if members are reading the newspapers, they'll see everything that's going on in the world from Syria and related stuff. I've had contact this morning with people regarding, intelligence people regarding briefings that's ongoing. The minute anything like that happens, the Police Scotland Force Executive met last night after the Canadian incident, and information's already circulating in the community. There are certain areas and tasks that are put out to local divisions when something like that happens, for basically areas to patrol, check, and deal in that. Can I say, as a Police Scotland and a local division, everyone is very much aware of what's going on and what needs to be done, and I wouldn't rather say any too much more on it at this time, if that's okay.
Okay, that's it. Richard?
Yeah, I welcome a number of improvements across a number of areas, tackling challenges such as domestic abuse and road safety issues, so that's good. Questions about allocation of time and effort across the force to deal with the 5 priorities, and how you allocate. Is it a constant battle day by day to tackle these priorities, or do you have campaigns across the year to tackle various issues? And also a point on the number of cases of drunkenness and problems in the street related to that. Is that due to lack of investment of time into that, the lesser figures on incidents during the year, or is it a genuine improvement on drunkenness in public places?
Well, the first part is, yes, it's a constant battle. If I said it wasn't, you'd be saying I had far too many resources, and we certainly don't have too many resources. It is a constant battle to meet all the demands across, particularly, and I mentioned the domestic abuse and the sexual crime. There's a considerable amount of effort involved in investigating these crimes. It can take a lot of time for whole teams of officers to do that. I think the point you were making there was, is it because we're having less proactivity as to how we're recording less crime? That's always a debate. The amount of effort you put into an area, you might raise the crime figures accordingly. But I think what we've noticed in this report is the less youth crime, less antisocial behaviour, less. They all seem to be quite linked in that whole theme, and less serious assaults right across the board. So I'm hoping that's a positive trend and it's moving down. However, we're now moving into a different time of year, when sometimes the nighttime activity changes, the dark nights, and the different crimes can have a different pattern to them as we move through that. But, I don't know if it is a constant battle, yes.
Okay, that's Jack.
Thank you, John. I see that antisocial behaviour is down 20% in Nitsdale. Just wondering if you can tell me why it was at the last town centre forum in Dumfries that they said that there was no incidents of skateboarders or that at Burn Statue, when if you go around and ask all the shopkeepers, they're having problems with skateboarders there, folk with bikes going through. You know, it's all marked as it has been reported. You know, is the cameras not working there anymore?
There has been a problems with cameras in the region. We have raised that recently because of a couple of serious incidents that happened when we had to review stuff for cameras. You may be aware of that. But your particular point from the Burn Statue, I shall certainly take that on board, and if that's a particular concern.
Thank you. We have. It's one of my pet gripes every meeting that we have is the ones that jump the traffic lights. The number of vehicles that are, especially coming up from the sands onto Buccleuch Street. I would like to know how many people have actually been. I was told that people have been reported for that, but I never seem to see anything. There's about 5 Every time you're going down Buccleuch Street and you're in that queue, you see about 5 of them turning that corner. And how there's not been a serious accident there, it's just luck, I think. Thank you.
Yep, we'll have a little focus on there.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Ian?
Thank you, Chairman. And my apologies for being a little late. I had a medical appointment this morning. And can also add that I had an email at 8:30 this morning from Graham Nicholl giving his apologies, obviously asking me to pass it in. Could accept that. Yeah, it's just a brief thing. It's an excellent report again, and I've no doubt that will continue when you in your new role.
It's a good foundation I had from a tutor years ago.
I was just about to add that. It's just one quick one, really. It's one, and I forgot my glasses as well, so I'm struggling here. It's the detection for drug supplies. You mentioned the figure was 71 down on last year, but you also said that it was up on the target that you'd set yourself. I just wondered why the target set was obviously well below last year's figures.
Well, the target's a trending target that we've done on month to month throughout the year. We had a very good start last year for that, so we're sitting slightly below just now. But the proactivity that's behind the scenes and the operations that are ready to run, we'll see that figure move. It's a timeline. It's just that this is a 5-month report. By the end of the year, we'll be ahead of that figure.
Thank you. I see you took the training and answered as well.
Okay, Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It's actually just a question about benchmarking in terms of the report. And obviously in some of the actual report data, it gives a kind of national picture. But obviously with a rural area like Dumfries and Galloway, it's hard to really know if that's a meaningful comparison basically in terms of the national picture, because that will include all the different divisions. So, I mean, even within, do you have a sort of benchmarking for family groups, if you like, of different authorities where it's a rural or similar demographic?
Very good point. Police Scotland are about to set their target setting for the forthcoming year, which will be year 3 of Police Scotland. And the analysts have put forward a discussion document in paper that divides it up into 3 as per large cities, large towns and urban and rural. And they've already extrapolated some figures to show where different areas will sit. But obviously we're sitting in the rural. So come year 3, and it looks like that is going to be the favoured method of showing it next year. We'll be looking basically we're family of divisions and how we compare relatively to other rural areas. So that's going to be the way ahead.
Thank you. So, and it was just really to get a better sense of, obviously, like through the improvement service and various things, the local authorities will have a way of benchmarking. And is there a kind of, do you work in tandem with, you know, how do you engage with other national sort of initiatives, if you like, for benchmarking, or is that just sort of purely operational within the Police Scotland itself?
It's purely operational, yes.
Ronnie and then Archie can back in.
Thanks. Just to follow on from what Stephen was saying in your covering statement, the role of scrutiny, you know, you reminded us how we come about. In Dumfries and Galloway, because we were co-terminus, we had the committee structure, as you know. So the question I was going to ask was, how is scrutiny performed elsewhere? And it ties in with what Stephen was saying about how do we benchmark. The benchmark we took, and those of us involved in the Pathfinder, was that on the 13th of April, that was our benchmark. So when Dumfries and Galloway stopped, we had to, you know, historically, that was where we were. So the statistics bear that out. So that was one of the questions I wanted to ask was, how is scrutiny performed elsewhere? You know, we're doing it through a committee structure under the council. And I just wondered how other councils done it, because you had several authorities, you know, police boards. So you'd have 3 or 4 authorities under one police board. In Dumfries and Galloway, we had it all in coterminous.
All the areas have got their local scrutiny boards. All local commanders go and report back and figures there. So everywhere has got a fairly similar structure to what we have here.
Can I go on to some questions now? Thanks for that, Robert. Yeah, just Archie and I were both safety reps at Chapel Cross. dealing with statistics, and if you got a department that had no accidents one year, and then maybe 2 the next year, it was a 200% increase. So I take your point about small statistics, because when you look at the street rate, it looked like a den of iniquity. There's 4 folk are drinking in public, you know. But to make that point, you know, we're dealing with small statistics, they can jump up and down. Aye, yeah. Or speeding drivers, he's not here though, is he? Where is it? I had put question marks. Oh, here it is. He said in page 16 under robberies, anecdotally I know that supermarkets are targeted in quite substantial sums of drink and DVDs and, you know, high value goods are taken. Is that not a robbery?
No, it's a definition thing.
You know, you get more points from Tesco, say, for argument's sake. No, do you not class that as a robbery then?
That'll be a theft or shoplifting.
Ah.
So it'll come under the theft category, so it'll be counted and recorded under those thefts. But it's not a robbery. All right,
well, that clears that up then. And the next thing was on page 18 when you said about, you know, mobile phones, seat belts and such like, you prefer to give people warnings. Now, I bet every councillor around here could, on the way here, we've probably seen somebody on a mobile phone,
well,
you know, and things like that, and it's dangerous. I mean, I'll give this example. Where I live, there's a straight road, and it's quite fast. And I was out walking my dog, and this woman came around the corner with a kid standing on the front seat. She was smoking and on the mobile phone all at the same time, and I thought, wish I had a camera, you know. That, you know, not what to do. She needed some education for lots of reasons. But I appreciate the emphasis on that. Since Police Scotland came in, I've seen more traffic cops in and around my town, Annan, and on the way here today, in fact, I've seen one going towards Annan, the big traffic cop. So I don't know if that's a higher priority, but if you're stopping folk and saying, you know, don't do it again, yeah, okay, you know, okay, Gov. So it's just a change of emphasis there, and I wondered, you know, obviously time will tell if it's successful.
It is. I mean, and the road deaths nationally figures there, and road deaths nationally are slightly up, but road deaths locally are down. And members will be aware that it's a fine line between a serious accident and a fatal road accident. Sometimes it's the medical services and the response time rather than the actual collision. There was a bit of fallout last year, but there was a concern that, and you'll have seen it in the public debates in the press, that the motorist was being persecuted everywhere. And there was a slight emphasis to go down, well, okay, we need to get an education as well as an enforcement phase. But I'm sure if these statistics continue and road deaths go up, the enforcement phase will be, the warnings, if they're not heeded to, will end up with convictions.
And my last point, Chair, please, it's domestic violence. And I know that was Stephen House's main priority, and which is welcome. Nobody should tolerate that. And now that Scotland's playing a lot better, maybe these violent things will not happen. Because football was associated, you know, Rangers, Celtic and all that. But
it is, yeah.
The point I was making was, in Dumfries and Galloway, the statistics are reasonable, but some are historic. You said, I read something in the press, there was a guy in my area, had 3 partners that he'd beat up, and somebody eventually reported, and they all come out, so that's 3 crimes, if you like. Yeah. That tends to be the case.
And that's the same in the sexual-related crimes as well, and you'll notice that there's a detection rate in there that says 108%. How can we have 108%? But if the crime happened in March last year, it's counted in March. But if the detection was in May, the detection's counted in May, and that's just how the stats work with that. Yeah. And quite often these things can take several months of inquiry before a case goes to the Procurator Fiscal and the person comes to court. And we've seen quite a few local examples in the press recently.
Actually, I wouldn't be a police, fire and rescue committee without bringing up the control room. Again, and I'm pleased to see that all former members of staff employed within Dumfries Control have now been redeployed within Police Scotland, taking opportunity for voluntary early retirement. I'm just wondering how many remained actually locally out of the 34 that were in that particular control room.
It remained in jobs locally. I think we're talking almost 50% of them took up the opportunity for jobs still within Police Scotland, working within there. I can get that exact figure and certainly report back if you want that, but it's roughly 50% of them did that.
Just come back on one more thing, Chair. It's something that's coming up very, very shortly. There was a change very recently on Remembrance Day parades. I think it was something that happened in Sederunt with Legion Scotland branch across here trying to run a 90-minute parade doing, Stranraer High Street. With road traffic, without a road traffic condition put in place or permit put in place. And right across Dumfries and Galloway, of course, this is the 100th anniversary of the First World War, and the outcome of that was that every parade will now require a road traffic order or a temporary road traffic order, as the case may be. Now, I know there's been discussions with Dumfries and Galloway roads officers and the Police Scotland, but I wonder if I can have a meeting with you as the Armed Forces champion to talk about that and how we deal with that in the future, rather than get 18, 19 different temporary road traffic orders in place.
Yeah, I think that whole legislation wasn't meant really to be targeting charities and these type of events. It was for other organisations that sometimes clog up the roads.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I had put a question mark after you just reminded me when you said about the control room. The new 101 number, anecdotally, and people have said to me they've used it, and there's a difficulty identifying areas. And raising it in my group, we've got some information that some of the outlying places, unless you have a postcode, it's difficult, Echo Feckin, that must cause a bit of giggling up in Glasgow. So I use that as an example. I was trying to think of something in the far-flung places where you come from, Ian. But seriously, unless you know the postcode, folks have to explain where they are and what it's all about. So there's a bit of a delay there. Eventually get there, because the local knowledge has been lost. We can't go back, we're going forward, but I'm just flagging up to you and whether you can feed it in somewhere. The other thing was, when you bring 101, because it's a national number now, and Dumfries and Galloway has low statistics of crime, very few murders or stuff like that, is it prioritised? Because we've got the feeling, anecdotally again, that, we'll get round to it eventually because Dumfries and Galloway is a low crime place, whereas Glasgow or somewhere else might get higher priority. I don't know if that's how it worked, but that was somebody's perception, so I promised I would raise it today.
Every call's prioritised, not the location it comes from. And obviously a priority 1 is a life-threatening call, something that's life-threatening. A priority 2 would be an urgent call, and a priority 3 would be a police response is required, but it's not urgent. And so every call is prioritised, nothing to do with the area.
If I could just come in that, because I've had concerns about the 101 as well, and I think the 101 was a great idea. As a member, I used to get a lot of phone calls from people that wanted me to phone the police, but I'm getting a lower number of that now. They're actually phoning the police themselves because they find it easier with the 101 number, which was a good thing. But in the more rural areas, I've experienced the same complaints as Ronnie's been getting. People not knowing street names. Well, in the early days, they had to tell them where the police was after going through all the local stuff. And it would just be good to have an assurance that that was just a hiccup and that these local areas aren't going to completely be sort of prioritised, because priority 1, 2 or 3 or whatever in a rural area might be different to what somebody at switchboard prioritises. We had a lot of vandalism recently, and it was directed at a local project that was putting up planters and spent a lot of community money tidying the place up. But they felt when they were reporting that it wasn't really taken seriously, but it's taken really serious to them to a point that they were going to stop doing it, and that would have been to the detriment of the community. So sometimes a priority that lies in a rural area might be a wee different priority to somebody that's answering the phone.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why it comes back down to the local police officers for that type of priority for local issues. What I would say to members, if anyone does want to visit the whole setup, I can arrange to show you how the contact centre, the control rooms and all that operate, and you can see it firsthand to put members at ease.
I think if members want to do it, Derek, could we maybe note that, and members wanted to pay a visit?
Certainly happy to take that on board, Chairman. Certainly something we'd offer across all council members beyond this committee as well. So it's certainly a welcome offer which we can progress.
Just on that point, Chair, thanks. If we're going to go, we could tie it onto one of these meetings. So there's not a lot of us. it'd be, you know, if you had 47 councils all want to come at different times, that might be a bit of an inconvenience. Whereas you've got organised groups, you know, of 6, 7, 8, whatever, to show us around, that might benefit you as well as us. So just something for Derek to consider, you know.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ronnie. Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. It's actually two sort of somewhat unrelated questions, but I think the first one is really, I think it's maybe more for us, or I don't know if it's a governance thing, but in the transition from into the single force, there was a kind of a notional or nominal consultation about the appointment of the local divisional commander. And this is more a sort of point of process, but now that obviously Robert's here in that role, how does that mechanism work in terms of the engagement with the local authority to make that appointment? And has that sort of been formalised, just for future reference kind of thing? And the second question was actually, again, to do with control centres, but because we're a division in our own right and the control centres serving a wider area, if you like, nationally, it's hard to really be clear how we can scrutinise the performance of that control centre, because it's not within our division and it's serving a wider area, so we don't really get the kind of data in terms of average national response times or whatever it might be. So how do we bridge that gap between what's a national strategic setup and what's a local service delivery issue? So I don't know how best to sort of direct those questions, but through yourself, Chair.
Well, on the second point, I think we could get that information here, couldn't we?
The Contact Command and Control Division do record that information. It's probably split into 3 areas: what they call the call handling time, the time the person on the phone takes that message. It then goes to the control room, and then it's the dispatch time, the time the control room find a resource to go and deal with the call. And then, of course, you've got that complete response time, the time the officer turns up on your door or at the scene of the incident. So that is recorded. We can get that. This part of the country is not too bad, the West. There's still some issues with the reconfiguration of control rooms and command and control systems throughout the country to get that nationally. But there is some data I could certainly provide if members would want that in future reports, and I can give comparisons with the rest of the country.
Just on that point itself, yeah, I mean, I think that'd be really helpful just to get an indication, really. But again, it touches back on what I was asking earlier about benchmarking for example, rural areas. So it could be that there is a picture where you would maybe expect a slight variation in the delivery of service in rural areas just because of the distribution of resources or whatever it might be. So there's obviously factors you can't control.
We'd look at the call handling time to be fairly similar, but yeah, the actual response time, mileage and distance would impact upon that.
And just on the other point about the succession process, if you like.
Yeah, I'll pass that one on to Derek.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, process has clearly now changed from what this authority was used to, where we were directly involved in the recruitment. As we know, that's progressed to the point now where it's a matter for the police authority themselves, and they will obviously reference the local authority, and indeed some of the papers I have with me today confirms the communication did take place between the police authority and the chief executive, just confirming the temporary arrangements that were being put in place. So that's the process that has been established nationally, and pleased to confirm that that was followed in this case.
So that's now through the chief executive. So it's not really something that normally would come before this subcommittee, as it were.
That's correct. Yep.
Any other members' questions? Can we go to the recommendations? To scrutinise policing performance for the period 1st April to 31st August 2014 as detailed in Appendix 2. Agreed? Thank you. Item 5, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 2014-2017, 5-month performance update. This report presents Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 2014 to 2017, 5-month performance update for 1st April 2014 to 31st August 2014 for members' scrutiny. I'd like to ask Alan Fairbairn. Alan, can you speak to the report?
Thank you, Chair. This performance report was the agreed format, and it's a replication of what is
provided at the local area committees. It's just an aggregated version provided for this committee purposes. I'm glad to say that the table that has been provided in 3.9 is showing indicators all in a downward trend, some of them quite significantly in a downward trend, even given a period of a transition to one national service, which is still in very early stages of 18 months since its lifespan. If I could go through some of the indicators in a more specific, deliberate primary fires as an example. Just for members' clarity, the figure on, or the table in 3.9 on page 22 that you have is the figures that have been provided for the April to August figures. And the top table on, for example, any other indicator, page 26, from 26 onwards, the main table there, we've given various formats as previously agreed to show the data in different formats, given different trend analysis. The main table at the top, you can see the figures that we are given. They are aggregated, but they're only included from April to May, June. So they are certified Q1 figures. The others are indicative, although they're more than likely to be the certified figures for June, July, and August. So it's just to give that differentiation in the actual figures that are being given. If I can go to deliberate primary fires as an example and give some background towards that, again, quite a significant drop and a good trend line that's showing a consistent improvement in this area. Deliberate primary fires, in conjunction with our colleagues in the police service and the preventative work that's ongoing with other partner agencies, whether that be education of school kids, more intervention of deliberate fire setters. All these types of programmes are obviously now having an effect, and a continually and consistent effect, which is a welcome factor that we're keen to progress and will maintain. With regard to deliberate secondary fires, again, it's on the same theme, but it's just the scale of the type of incident. Secondary fires, for members' information, are the lesser, I would say, types of fire that may involve rubbish, bin fires, grass being set alight, and some other less significant fires in terms of buildings. However, they still have a significant effect on the resources in the area and the impact that they can have on local areas. And again, it's a good sign and an indication of the partnership working with our colleagues and other agencies that we are seeing, again, a downward trend in those types of incidents. We are moving in, as we now speak, to the November period, which traditionally sees a rise in that type of activity, but there is, I'm sure members will be aware, a full partnership approach to that type of activity for the forthcoming period, bonfire. Accidental dwelling fires, this really is our bread and butter. This is the one that we really want to drive down. And although, again, it's a downward trend we are seeing to a certain extent, the main significance of this one is that we are seeing, it's maybe plateaued a bit, and I can give you an indication that that's probably indicative of other areas of Scotland as well. Dwelling fires, the number are being reported are going up, but that is indicative of the activity that the fire service has taken in general and being really proactive in home fire safety visits. We are now providing home fire safety visits, and we have done for a number of years now, where we provide detectors into houses. So whereas someone's small fire, we may have had a small fire in the house, which in the past, in years gone by, may have been gone unreported, there is now an attendance being made. The significance of it, though, is that the numbers are still going down. But where we are attending, the significance is that the severity of the fire is much less than what it could have been and what probably has been in the past. So where we are getting indicated and responding very early because we are getting an alarm being signalled to us, the resultant significance and the impact of the incident is far greater. And you'll see that in indicators going forward in terms of fatalities and fire casualties, that is indicative of that approach as well, because we are intervening where we have to much earlier. If I could move on to all accidental other building fires. This category looks at all other building fires, whether it's shop premises, commercial premises, council premises, wherever they may be. And again, you can see a downward trend. What we are doing with that particular directorate is
enforcement officers where there is a legislative requirement for fire certification of premises, that we are being much more proactive in terms of not only enforcing the legislation where there is a requirement, but over the whole of Scotland there is, and has been for a number of years now, a more proactive approach to inform and work with certificate holders of premise businesses and managers to be advisory in the first instance and enforcement where we have to. So again, the advisory aspect of that is having a significant effect. You can see the numbers are dropping and consistently. Again, another great sign to note. All other fatal fires, again, although those numbers are historically low, there is no complacency here because one fire fatality for us is one more than we want, and we will maintain and continue a proactive response in terms of home fire safety visits, education of communities, partnership working, and we are moving forward with in a much more partnership approach, developing information sharing protocols so that, for example, if health services are giving us notification of vulnerable persons, as we move towards multi-agency approach towards securing and doing what we can. We're also we're moving towards an approach of any person who goes over the threshold, whether that be fire, we are having slip, trips and falls. So we won't go into a person's home for a home fire safety visit looking specifically for fire. Obviously that is the primary reason we're there, but we are moving to an environment now where our staff and whoever goes over the door should be looking out for other partners agencies' targets as well. So if we see, for example, child abuse, if we see an elderly resident where there may be obvious signs of potential slip, trips and falls, sloping curves, broke, cracked curbways, the references and the partnership pathways to move that information out is becoming more and more prolific, and that's the direction that the service is moving in along with our partners. So that is a pleasing note. And the final a couple of indicators, non-fatal fire casualties, again, it's a downward trend and the numbers are extremely low, and where there is, as I said, casualties showing signs and needing intervention, the severity of the injuries are much lesser, and that's for a number of reasons. Early intervention, because of the alarms and giving us an early call, but also the skills of our staff, and one recognising that someone may have taken a smoke inhalation and need treatment in the first instance. They are proactively promoting them and progressing them onto our colleagues in the ambulance service and the health service, but also just other early interventions using the skills that the enhanced skills that our staff have. Special service road traffic collisions, these are the ones that we are attending. Obviously, we don't attend all road traffic collisions. Our colleagues in the police service will do this. Is the ones that are more serious, of a more serious nature, where the services and the skills and equipment of the fire service are required. Again, it's a downward trend for us in our instance, and it's a welcome one. But again, that as members will be aware, our real emphasis and obligation in this field is really an education one. So we are going into schools, we are hard-hitting lessons to the future drivers, the 16, 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are going to be the next generation. That's when we're going in with quite a hard-hitting message across the schools to try and get that message across in quite a dramatic way. Also, we understand that and recognise that there's a transient area. This is a transient area for us, and we recently held an event at the Gretna Gateway. It was a multi-agency event, and that was quite successful, getting the road safety message out to drivers who are passing through the local area. Special service, non-fatal. This is an all-encompassing criteria, so all of the other whether it be flood rescue, whether it be assisting the police with a rescue, someone trapped in machinery, that all those full range of categories are all encompassed in this one. Again, the numbers are relatively low, but that can fluctuate for hugely varying numbers of reasons. the note says the majority of them are from road traffic collisions, but it includes water rescues as well. The numbers are generally low. And the final category that I would look at is false alarms, and false alarms being malicious and false alarms from equipment failure. False alarm malicious one is very low. The numbers are really, really low, but again, they are still an unwanted call that we will challenge. There are control rooms, both the existing Dumfries control and the next iteration of that at the Johnston control will challenge calls, and that seems to be having a big effect. So when a child, as an example, gives a call, they are challenged for more information on it. And generally, if it's a hoax call, a lot of the times they will hang up. Other than that, they will be made. So that policy of challenging calls, where our experienced control operators feel and get a feel that the call, the nature of the content from the caller may be of a hoax nature or a false nature. That challenge generally can alleviate the call just hanging up or declaring it's a hoax call. So that is low, but we don't rest on the laurels. And again, we educate the next generation of school kids coming through, and that's still part of the partnership process. The final category for myself is false alarms, is equipment failure. Now, although the numbers are on the trend line are generally low, this is at a national level, we really would like to be able to split this, or I would certainly like to be able to split this, because it encompasses all false alarms, whether they are in commercial and industrial premises or retail premises, and also domestic settings. In one instance, we are driving them down, and we'd like to drive them down in commercial premises. For example, historically, health service hospitals were big had a big demand on our services. Post it on at 5, 6, 7 in the morning, set off the alarms every day. The fire service across the whole of Scotland, probably the whole of Britain, rolled out towards these hospitals. Over the years, that process of educating, getting alarms checked, getting alarms engineers in to educate staff, etc., sometimes changing practice of having posters removed, have all had an impact. So that is one side of the demand where we can and are proactively working with the repeat top offenders to drive that down. On the other side of it, where we are seeing an increase, and we welcome the increase, is in the domestic setting, and that's predominantly down to the provision of smoke detectors, and that's one I'd like to see going up. However, where there is problems in that, for example, if some detectors are maybe not sited properly and still causing alarm, sheltered housing, it may be a case that we can put different types of alarms in. That is all work that's being progressed. So it's one to take a note of. We are fully aware of the implications, and we are the ones who want to drive this demand down. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Alan. Before I open that up to members, I'd just like to say I sort of flew on from item 5 to item 6 without thanking Bobby for his comprehensive report. Thank you very much, Bobby. Members' question on Alan's report.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, obviously the fire service have been extremely good at doing the preventative, proactive approaches over the many years in Dumfries and Galloway. And it wouldn't be right for us not to share perhaps an opportunity with you and where we can see things. Now, when you look at things like the Common Housing Register, for instance, that there's an opportunity there. All of us here will remember things like pensioners' houses. There's no such a thing as pensioners' houses. They're only single-person accommodation things now. But in planning yesterday, there was an application from Lorburn for 2 blocks of six houses. And what they're going to do locally is talk to the community about perhaps having an opportunity for older persons to be in those blocks, or certainly single people within the area. There's obviously equality legislation that we've got to take into consideration when that comes through. But I think the views of the community are also really important as well. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for the Fire and Rescue Service to talk to the housing associations to say, if you are building in the future, and you know, you mentioned about hardwired smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and that type of thing, talking to those people, to the agents who are actually doing the diagrams, the architects, because they've got legislation requirements under CDM regs as well to ensure that they're things. But I certainly think there might be an opportunity for the fire service, not only locally but nationally as well, to talk to Scottish Government and say, perhaps you should be looking at going back to pensioners, which is with wardens, looking at the preventative side of things rather as, you know, and those wardens having the necessary skills to look at the smoke detectors, the carbon monoxide, all that type of thing as well. So it would be wrong, I think, to have this without bringing opportunity towards fire service. I'm sure you'll be doing something anyway, but it's just in case.
We welcome any opportunity to speak to any residents groups, and any time we can get through a door, whether it's through our own devices or through another agency, we will hang on to anybody's coattails to try and get our message through. Members will be aware that there is a focus and a drive for to allow our elderly residents to live sustained independent life. So that needs to be supported by all the services, and that is the way things are being driven. Into information sharing protocols will assist with that, as will, and particularly in respect to the elderly, technological advances. So you've got telecare systems, which will have smoke detection, panic alarms. There's a full range of indicators and devices that can be fitted into that particular technological fix, which fire service is well plugged into. And over and above that, the provision of domestic sprinklers is another one where, in that type of housing that is being, if it is being progressed, I would like to, there's fire service will always bang the drum that we'd like to see the provision of domestic sprinklers, and that's a campaign that's been ongoing, but it needs support from different agencies.
Thank you. It's really just the same point. I mean, I know in the police service, probably for at least 30 years, they've had architect liaison officers and secure by design and things like that. Surely nationally, the fire service must have something similar, especially for big projects, big housing projects.
Absolutely. We are, as soon as the plans come in, our fire safety enforcement officers are working with the architects and to determine the design. There is planning conventions that obviously have to be complied with in terms of exits, windows and things like that. Whether it goes to the extent of having to put in, the hardware detection is mandatory now, but the next iteration of that may be, I would like to see mandatory domestic sprinklers, but that's a much higher pay grade than me.
Any other questions? Ron?
You've got to look this way now and again. I know it's bad light. You know. Just follow that last point about the sprinklers. I remember David Wynn was very keen. We had that demonstration. I don't know if you were there, but up at the just outside the Ashton Hotel at the Crichton campus. Very effective, and it showed you there's 3 different scenarios, and a little bit of water goes a long way. I know domestically the legislation is not there, but I thought there was some moves from the Scottish Government to, like I actually mentioned, the houses of blocks of houses to put in some sort of sprinkler system, but that might not be there yet. So that was my first question. I'll ask one at a time, just carry on.
With regard to domestic sprinklers, my understanding is the Welsh Government have already legislated for domestic sprinklers. Over and above that, we have some local authorities, I'm unaware of whether this local authority has any premises, but some local authorities across Scotland have whether been building premises for maybe elderly or vulnerable individuals or people with special needs, where there is absolutely no other way that we can secure them from fire and their neighbours. They've retrospectively put in domestic sprinklers. There's also an instance where down south, our local authority down in England undertook it as an exercise to see if it could be done. And there's a tower block to see if domestic sprinklers could be retrospectively fitted in a cost-effective way or a non-prohibitive, cost-prohibitive way into that type of premises. And it was undertaken without real disruption to tenants, within cost and within timescales. So it was an exercise to see if it could be done. That's probably sitting with UK government at the moment, I would imagine. However, there is presentations available on it, so you could be aware of it. Depending on where legislation goes in terms of the provision of domestic sprinklers, whether they move towards that, they can be very easily retrofitted. It's like putting in most instances, a central heating system, probably less disruption. A lot of people are under the misconception that if one detector head goes off, the whole place goes off and it's flooded, and it's a scene from Towering Inferno. That's not the case. It's only each detector would go off and actuate it, and generally puts out the fire within with very, very limited water damage. They're aesthetically pleasing, so it's really just a case of an education process in a lot of instances. And the more that domestic sprinklers are advocated and possibly legislated for, undoubtedly the cost will come down because there'll be a competitive element there.
I'm just wondering, Derek, if there's an opportunity here to take something to Housing Subcommittee for all the local housing authorities or housing associations to consider that when they're actually, bringing forward planning applications for more than, say, 4 houses or something like that. I'd love to see it in every house, and of course there'd be a cost associated with that, so it would be up to the housing association if they took that on board. But I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to take something like that to Housing Sub.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I think interesting discussion, and certainly something that I've been familiar with over the years. What I would suggest in the first instance, Chairman, is that we get a report to the Community Safety Partnership to just look at the existing kind of arrangements we have within the authority in terms of policy, procedures for the sprinklers, and then that can then go through the appropriate member channels, such as the Housing Sub. So I think the point's well made, and happy to progress that if members are happy on these terms. Thank you, Chairman.
I think there's another wee point as well, Archie, about, as I say, I've got a dad that's in sheltered housing, and they're very vulnerable, and it's quite difficult to explain to them as well in the event of a fire what would happen because of short-term memory and that. So I think there's a role for the people that run sheltered housing that as well, to repeatedly tell their residents what to do in the event of fire and what the procedures are, because they sometimes feel that they're not very sure what to do if that occurs. So I think there's a role for them. I think there's a role for this and other partners that's involved. Thanks for that suggestion, Archie. Ronnie, carry on.
Yeah, the last thing, well, one of the things was the preventative things. I was watching Border News last week, and Borders Council had this, what we know as Operation Safety, and they were saying, oh, this is brilliant, I've got the kids, primary 6 and 7s, and I thought, we've been doing that in this area for 15 years, so, but anyway, so I thought that was good, because they're saying it was good practice. We've been doing it, and you could see the statistics. So the point you're making about getting in early, and equally in our area, we have the young drivers, Chapel Cross organise it, and it's sort of the Annandale-Eskdale part. I don't know if that's still replicated across Dumfries or not, but I know it happens in Annandale-Eskdale, and that seems to have an effect. There's a waiting list to get onto that, but of course they grow older. So these things do work, and the statistics tend to bear that out over the time. The other thing was, that was more a statement than it was an observation, the heavy animals and the special services. Now, we had a brilliant demonstration up at Cargan Tower Bridge, what we call it, and when Pat Hanlon and Vic Emery were here, is that being recorded? So there was lots of other things, everybody thinks a firefighter just fights fires, but there's the RTCs, heavy animal rescue equipment, and lots of other stuff. And the fact that just up the road from me in Annan, the pod for the water rescue is there. So there's all these things that your officers are new skills, because fires are less now. But so you've mentioned that, but how do we capture that? Because it's a very generic statistic in here, yet we know that there's a lot of success, a flood saved one person's life, that's one person's life saved, it's not a casualty. So I don't know how we capture that, and rescuing horses and cattle and stuff from with the heavy rescue equipment. How many times that's been used, that sort of thing. Because you can practice, but unless you do it in real life situations, you can't keep current, the skill base, maybe how you maintain the skill base.
Put the horses under starter's orders.
I was going to put it before the car.
it is a very valid point. Our skill sets and functions that the fire service have taken on over the number of years is increasing greatly. We attend urban search and rescues, flooding. We rescue from height now, so it's line rescue, water rescue, fast water swimmers. There's a huge range of skills, and each of those functions carries a great training requirement and certification, so there's a huge capacity on the service. You're absolutely right that the number of incidents although it's welcome, the flip side of that is that if you're not getting experiential learning, that can have an impact on capabilities and competence when it's actually required. And that's why the training requirement has to be so demanding and so realistic, and we have now got a beautiful complex up in the Campus Lang area as a national fire and rescue training centre, which is state of the art, to allow those realistic simulations and conditions to be replicated across all the functions that we have to train for. It is a challenge, though, maintaining that competencies across that huge wide range of functions that our staff have to maintain competencies in.
Thanks, Chair. I took the opportunity to go to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service thing across at the Cairndale last couple of weeks, and met officers from across Scotland. And Hamish was there from, I think he covers the West region, doesn't he, at the moment. And I did ask a question about the local plan, of course, which we haven't agreed because we'd like to see one thing changed in it, and that was about trying to keep as many jobs locally as possible. And the response we got at full council was, well, every local authority would want that on theirs anyway. And I'm just wondering if there's any movement on the local plan, because all the 31 local authorities have signed theirs. We haven't signed ours, so if you could just add it into yours, we'll just sign it and that'll be fine. They've already agreed theirs.
That form of words that was proposed at the last full council is not included in any other 31 plans. They agreed the plans based on what was presented to each individual local authority.
Is there any further questions for members? No. We've got recommendations. To scrutinise the performance report from Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for Dumfries and Galloway from 1st April to 31st August 2014 as detailed in the appendix. Agreed?
How do we define scrutinise? I mean, do you feel you've been scrutinised? I mean, we think we've scrutinised you, but, it's a bit nebulous to say we've scrutinised you, Sorry, it's just a silly thing.
Do you feel scrutinised, though? Yeah, as I say, we are the body for this council to scrutinise the police and the fire services. So.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if whether it's a recommendation or a note to take that information forward to, the Community Health Safety Partnership, and then cascade it down for there for especially housing associations.
Quite happy with adding something in, Derek, because I think that was quite a valuable discussion in that, and quite an important issue. That's what we're here for.
Just on the wider point raised by Councillor Ogilvie, Chairman, paragraphs 3-7 of the committee report, members will note the covering reports. What we're hopefully providing members with is a bit of context, and therefore in terms of when you receive the performance reports from both police and fire, paragraph 3-7 sets out the sorts of things we're suggesting members might want to be taking into account and consider to ensure that in fact you are carrying out an effective scrutiny role, and hopefully over the next year we can see that change and improve, and therefore quite understandably from officers' perspective we come out at the end of it feeling that both the performance information has provided members with sufficient detail, but on the other hand members have been able to fulfil their scrutiny role. So a bit of context, paragraph 3-7 hopefully draws members into the specific area you should be thinking about. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks for that. Item 6. HIMICS and SPA announced on the 14th of September 2014 a complementary programme of review and inquiry into the decision of Police Scotland to give a small number of firearms officers a standing authority to carry firearms. This report seeks agreement on the Dumfries and Galloway Council's response to the SPA call for evidence on armed policemen. I'd like to call Elsa to speak to the report, please.
Before you do, can you thank Alan for his...
Thanks very much for your report.
Morning, members. This report contains the response to the Scottish Police Authority call for evidence on armed policing. The response was compiled following responses from Councillor Jane Maitland, representing the Independent Group, and Councillor John Syme, representing the Labour Group. I'm happy to take any further comments.
I take it members have had time to read the response. Do you just want to give it? Do you want me to go through them, or do you just want to give us a feedback on any of the certain points that we put in?
Thank you. I mean, I suppose my main reflection on it is that I feel we should, where possible, have an evidence-based response, and maybe try and avoid or sort of temper quite. You know, there's quite a lot of examples of very emotional language which can often be misinterpreted, which is the danger of emotional language sometimes. So there's a few sort of sections where, although the message is probably can assume to be that better consultation would be required, but there's a danger that we're maybe emotionally trying to interfere in what is effectively an operational matter sometimes, although we recognise that there should be a greater sensitivity to the possible impacts it could have on the perceptions of the public. So I think there's a few sections in there where the phrasing could maybe be a better reflection on the wider council's response, but I don't know how you want to go through the actual different answers in each section.
Could you tell us the certain parts that you're concerned with?
Sure, thank you. So I think the community impact in section 1, it goes on to sort of allude to sort of customer surveys in terms of the, you know, customer satisfaction surveys, if you like, in terms of the levels of public safety, where there's no comments in relation to visible firearms from the respondents. Okay, so that's an evidence-based activity there, but in the first section it does seem to assume quite a lot about what people's perceptions may or may not be. And although it might resonate with a lot of people in this room, because anecdotally I'm sure people will have voiced concerns, but I'm not sure if that's a strong enough reason to include sort of a robust response in section 1. So, for example, the change makes the public feel less, not more secure. Now, I'm not sure exactly if that's true. I think that's the sort of issue. So, although people might have an opinion about it, their relative safety might not actually be what's in question. It might just be something that people have thought about, but it's not really measured very well. That's what I'm meaning. Another one, seeing as you've asked me, is okay, fair enough. Well, sorry, through yourself, Chair, you'd asked me to go through it. So.
Point, because I mean, I speak for the people I represent, and that's how they feel, and the others that had the input into the form.
She's coming back. I mean, as Dumfries and Galloway Council annually do conduct a community safety survey. That's fact. Now, whether it's to do with police being armed or whatever, is I think in this perspective, it gives a background as to why we're doing the answers later on. And I think, as I said before, when we had the police report, Dumfries and Galloway is a relatively safe area within Scotland. So I don't think there's anything untoward in saying that, because it's people's perception who are replying to a community safety survey. But it is going to say we ever cannot attribute visible firearms to residents feeling safe. But I also think that the community understand there will be on occasions that the police do have to have firearms. And again, that what you said before, Stephen, is looking at the emotive side of things. That, in fact, is an operational issue for the police to carry out that risk assessment as and when those incidents happen. So I think that particular part is quite clear to me. And I think Dumfries and Galloway is a pretty relative safe place to be. But I also think the community know that the police have to carry firearms in certain occasions, like the, for instance, in Annan when the guy in the Spar carried a knife.
Just a minute, Stu, I think Derek, right?
Yeah, thanks,
answer one
Chairman.
here.
Thank you, Chairman. No, just I think it's important for members that yes, we need to ensure that members today sign off the authority's submission and it's factually correct. That's absolutely crucial that we do that. I would, however, draw out that the submission itself is about drawing on our experiences, views and opinions. So there's an element that we need to just balance it being an evidence-based response with ensuring that it does capture our own experience and opinions. And so therefore, if you're going through the submission, I would just ask you to bear that in mind, members. Thank you.
Stephen?
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I think what sort of highlights it for me is phrases like something being, it's depressing and astonishing to realise that things are not properly understood by the police, or that unless the police do certain things, this matter will fester and cause resentment. I feel it's, I accept that there is a sort of an opinion-based element to the response, but equally, I'm not sure how constructive that can actually be in terms of making the response meaningful. So I'm just wondering how we would balance emotional language like that in a bid to be more constructive and finding a way forward for better engagement and feedback. Obviously, there is an issue in terms of how we were or how we weren't consulted about certain operational matters, but to some extent that is an operational matter for the police. It would, in the spirit of engagement, I think we should really get a clear message that improving the engagement between Police Scotland and the local authority would encourage and sort of improve relationships if people are kept informed, which is captured in various of the submissions. But I think there's a danger that we're actually not helping the engagement if we're sort of going to respond like that. That's really the point I'm trying to get across.
I think the difference is with an exercise like this, it would be a wee bit different if you were in this chair and not me. I had to put my input in along with the other people involved in it. And if each individual member here were involved in this, you might get a different response. You might get some people maybe put a more emotional response in as some of the questions they would put in. That's the difficulty we have here. But I mean, we have a time limit to do this. Would you rather we didn't send a response at all? So we have to send a response, and I'm really pleased with the response here. I think it actually echoes the feelings of my constituents, and that's really my involvement here. But as I say, it's open to members here today to put their points forward and discuss it. Richard.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I think there was a policy introduced by Police Scotland on the day they came into being, and it was a policy which didn't fit in with the needs of Dumfries and Galloway, because it wasn't commensurate with what the need to keep people safe in Dumfries and Galloway is. We were moving from a policy of armed response teams coming out to meet individual situations, and we're moving from armed police being 7 days on the street to 365 days in the street, and that was a policy change. And I'm glad that we are putting this response in, and it reflects my feelings, my views, my opinions, and my constituents' opinions as well. And I think Stephen's got a point where if there are words which are emotive, which could be tempered, then fair enough. But I think I'm quite happy with section 1 if you want to pass that one.
Thank you. So I welcome any other members' points, bearing in mind what Stephen said. Ian?
Yeah, it's just really, when you're speaking about the comments or the feelings of your constituents, can I say that I've had absolutely no adverse comments towards the police army whatsoever? In any of the meetings I've gone, any community councils or anything, some have made comment on it, but certainly no adverse. I've purposely not been too directly involved because I have my own views on the army, police, and the necessity for it, certainly on occasions, and even in general, 365 days a year if necessary. Yes, we do live in a safe area. I formerly worked in a safe area, but during that time there were numerous incidents when armed officers were very, very welcome. Only a few years ago we had an incident in Cumbria, and albeit the person concerned didn't come into Dumfries and Galloway, but Dumfries and Galloway had to react to that situation very quickly because he could have come in this situation. So I tend to agree with Stephen. I think, where, yes, we have to do a response, and absolutely no doubt, but the use of emotive language maybe needs to be tempered.
Anybody else?
Just coming back to what I said before, here, obviously there's the health safety audit that gets done, the survey that gets done across Dumfries and Galloway. I don't think anybody's of the opinion that the police shouldn't be armed, shouldn't be armed full time. There's going to be occasions with regards when police need to be armed because of the different incidents that they actually attend. And again, that's down to the local officers doing the risk assessment and making sure that opportunity is available, albeit, we hope it reduces over time. The situation, quite simple for me, is that this is a response on behalf of the Police Fire and Rescue Committee, on behalf of the Council. I think it does sort of temper into emotions, but there are people who have emotional feelings about, armed officers and things like that. I think the really important thing that needs to be perhaps added into this is that obviously we have an extremely well-trained and community-involved police force in Dumfries and Galloway, especially with all the work that the officers do around about youth football and things like that. But I think that when it comes to the risk assessment of incidents, the opportunity should be made available on that risk assessment for armed response to actually be there. Much as we'd all love to see arms done away with altogether, but you do have, as it says within the report, something in the region of 16,000 firearms in Dumfries and Galloway for people who do wildfowling and things like that. And it may be that on one occasion something breaks somebody's mental health, and we've seen what happened, as you say, down in Cumbria. I think we do need to have a response in here. I think the response is appropriate and just, and what we see in the report. It's got a lot of the survey information coming back from the Community Safety Survey, which is the factual evidence coming back, but it does need to be tempered with emotional evidence as well. If that sort of looks to those who are reading the report as an emotional response, then I'm sorry, we do have people who have got emotional responses to this, and it's right that we highlight that at that particular report. And I'm quite happy with the response, Chair.
Thanks, Archie. Could I just say to members, a suggestion that we bear in mind all that's been said today. We have another look at the response this afternoon with Derek and Ailsa. If we feel it's a wee bit, like you say, a wee bit over the top as the emotional response, we'll modify that and send another copy to members for their agreement, see if we can get middle ground. As I say, we're taking on board that's the reason we're bringing it here today, is to see what everybody feels about it, because it's a very emotive subject for a lot of people, and it gets a lot of different, everybody's got a different response on it. Carry on, Ray.
Yeah, I appreciate that, what you're going to do there, Chair, but the Derek Burdley situation, if we take that as an analogy, and quite rightly, and that's what was said at area committee, was, a thing happened in Cumbria, we need to be... But if you've got one armed car and it's in Stranraer and something happens over in Langham, or is there an armoured car everywhere? I'm not trying to be flippant, but to use that as an argument, doesn't it, all officers can be armed. Anybody who's been in the police, well, you'll know that, Ian. We've all been at the army and seen it. So all trained officers can be armed, not all armed. Yeah. But now we've got dedicated armed policemen. And if somebody worked at Chattel Cross, they had to walk by a schoolboy with a bloody machine gun. Well, they look like a schoolboy, but that's because I'm getting older. You think, oh my God, But the that was quite a shock when that happened. And some of the workers were saying, well, hang on. And there were still issues that was raised at Health and Safety Committees at Chattel Cross about people jumping in and out of cars with loaded guns. And that's inside Chattel Cross. So there is we're not used to it. And the first time I ever went abroad and you saw the Spanish police with the guns, my son was very excited. I don't know why. But so there is a perception. The point I'm trying to make, Chair, is that we've captured a moment in time here. We've been asked to. And there is people who say, it's fine, no problem. And there's others saying, there was something going on in the street and all these guys turned up in the car and they all had guns, and they're asking you, what was it? I said, well, it was just a young man screaming and shouting from a flat, but the armed officers were there. So there is, we've got to sort of send a message that, fine, there's operational things that we kind of get involved in. However, there's consultation. Now, it says in here that the area committee was informed well, and Dick made his point at that area committee, as he made today, quite rightly so, because it was never expanded upon. So we just took it at face value. I'm not saying they were lied to, but it was just something new. Now it's been out there for maybe a year or so, I can't remember exactly when it came to the area committee. People are saying, hang on, is this, So that, I don't want to get too emotional, because I might have to get deleted. But we've got to send the message that, there's the Chief Constable, but there's people that he's responsible to, and that's the public. And if you have your operational thing and that impacts on the public's perception, and you're not consulted and through the elected people like us and others, there is a consequence to that. And I think we're flagging up to them, hang on, you've done that, okay, you've stepped back a bit from what I've gathered because of the pressure on from the Scottish Parliament. We were here to scrutinise, we didn't know about it other than some guy came to the area committee and mentioned that we're going to have an armed response vehicle. Well, that doesn't sound that bad, because there is arms response vehicles. There always has been. But now they're turning out to routine incidents. So I think, change the words, take some of the more emotive ones out if you want, but you've got to get the same message. So that any words you change have to mean the same thing. You've got to capture people's feelings in this one.
As I say, this is only part of it. I'll be doing a verbal response in front of the SPA committee as well. So this isn't the only response, and I bear all the feelings of members in mind. So I've been in agreement that we tweak this a wee bit in the afternoon with the emotional side, bearing in mind what some members have said, and we'll get a copy of the revised one back to you. Agreed?
Yeah, that'll be fine, yeah. But I think, I trust you to take forward the understanding of the Police, Fire and Rescue Committee, because you've been up in front of them before, haven't you? Normally handcuffed. And so, if that's fine, I think an email and then we can have a look and get to some perspective.
Chair, it just strikes me, Elsa's the author of the report, and the words that she was given, and she's put them in there. I'm not to put her on the spot, but there must be a good reason for putting them in there. If we're going to tweak them, then does that dilute the report? I'll leave that to you to discuss yourselves. But this is a recorded meeting, and folk could plug into this. So Elsa's the author of the report. She's done that for, I think, for good reason, just to give a feeling of how we feel, or capture that, the essence of it. So you got to change words, maintain the essence of what people were saying.
When Elsa came to committee today, we did agree that if there was any minor adjustments that members thought should be made, that's why she's here, and we would amend that. And I understand it should probably have I sort of understand if it requires to be done. I could work together with it, do that, Derek. Elsa?
Yeah, it was Andrew Reid from Policy and Performance Unit and myself that put it together. But when we did the initial report, we then got comments from Councillor Syme on behalf of the Labour group, and then we got comments from Councillor Maitland on behalf of the Independent group. So we had to try and capture, and so the language is emotive, but that was the comments that came back. So but it's up to members for you to, if that is the response. But that's certainly the language that came back and has been used in the report, is what came back from the Labour group and Independent members.
Sorry, I'm not trying to play politics or anything, but that only two groups that responded.
Thank you, Chair. No, and I think that's, I totally, I agree with the spirit of the response. I think that's what I'm trying to say. But I think the language could be more considered to reflect it better. And just on a wee point, if you're reviewing the document anyway, there's a wee copy and paste error, I think. Just at the end of section 1, the second paragraph's repeated at the end of that section as well. There is also a concern that gun carrying. It's the paragraph that ends, but guns repel people. So that's repeated twice. So I didn't want to get
I was going to mention that, but I didn't want to embarrass you.
All right, sorry. No, but I think it's in the spirit of just, you know, finalising the response, as it were. I mean, in a sense, we could. I looked at this and I sort of thought, what are we wanting to actually achieve from this response? And I think it was more, how effective can we be in getting Dumfries and Galloway's view across from this committee and from the council, and getting the maximum benefit from that, if you like, in terms of representing what our views are in terms of, you know, so we can send it sort of screaming and bawling in response, or we can send it on target like a bullet from a gun, right? So I think that's really where I wanted to think, should we consider tempering the response a wee bit, so it would reflect that yes, there is an emotional reaction from people, but our actual council's response is a thoughtful and considered one. That's really what I'm getting at.
Different opinion. I mean, I could have been shouting and bawling, or could have had even more emotional response. And just with the people who were involved in putting it together, that was what we come up with, and we were all in agreement with that. But I mean, everybody's going to have different opinions. But that I was quite pleased with this response. But we've got to all been a sort of some kind of agreement to what we're saying.
Chair, I know I'm sitting here, I'm very conscious this is your members' response, but if anybody wants any background information or anything behind it, I'm quite willing to offer that.
Thank you, Chairman. I think just for everybody's benefit, it would be helpful to just now be clear what we're doing with the response, because obviously it's a danger that we take a decision and we're not actually clear what the decision was. So as I understand it, we have a response before us, which has been drafted and has had input as requested from groups to this point. I think we need to be clear, are we generally happy with the response, and we submit it on these terms with delegated to myself the fine-tuning that has been discussed. And that's what it would be. It'd be nothing more than that. If we're not happy with the response, we've either got an alternative response or we've got no response. So I think it's just important that we're clear with members that we've already sought and agreed a deadline with the SPA for this submission being late. Has to go in today. Therefore, literally, it's a fine-tuning of this response based on the comments that are made today. And that would be something I would do in conjunction with the chairman, but clearly that would be ultimately delegated to myself to put that in. So I just want to be clear of the decision that members are taking. Thank you, Chairman.
That's it.
So thanks, Chair. I think Derek's put the clarity on it that I certainly wanted to see going forward, and you know, and I know Derek isn't an emotional person anyway, so he does all that sort of stuff naturally.
We were asked for a response. It went out to everybody, and groups have replied. And then somebody turns up at a committee meeting and says, I don't like what you've put in there. They should have put in their own submission as well. If we're going to have consultations as a committee, then it's incumbent on everybody to put in prior to today, because everybody knows the deadline's been extended for us. And I thought it was just a matter of, we'll agree this. And it'll go in with 32 others and individual ones and MSPs, and it'll get in the mix. And to be honest, I don't think anybody will take a blind bit of notice, but that's, so let's scream and shout as we always do. But I think it's incumbent on other groups and other people within the council, if they're going to criticise submissions, at least put their own submission in, so they've got some basis to criticise.
As I said, the recommendation was to review the NRD, so we're reviewing it today, but in a review you've got to take everybody's responses on board. So we agreed that we can now go to the recommendations on, but Derek, put forward there. Good job you're there, Raj. I thought it was all right, son. Now, recommended to review and agree Appendix 3 is the Dumfries and Galloway Council response to the Scottish Police Authority call for evidence on armed policing. And 2, to note the chairman will represent the subcommittee and attend the evidence session on armed policing on 31st October 2014. Agreed?
And that 2.1 includes Derek's first recommendation on the fine-tuning. The response is kind of what we want, but it just needs fine-tuned, as it were, once Derek casts his eye. Is that correct?
That's been agreed, yeah.